All right, from the beginning. So the topic is the Almost Jackie, and it's the baseball story of football pioneer Kenny Washington. And it's from my latest book called Walking Alone, The Untold Journey of Football Pioneer Kenny Washington. And a lot of times when I ask people if they know who Kenny Washington was, well, this is kind of the look I get in response. So if I get that look from any of you or you feel this way, don't be alone. Don't feel alone, because I was really there when I got started with the project, and I had to delve into a lot of different resources to learn about Kenny Washington. One of the resources was Groucho Marx, believe it or not.
You bet your life. Follow football. This is one of the legendary names in the game. No, this one. This is Mr. Washington, the first man to ever throw a dollar across the Potomac River. For those who don't follow,
And a little shot of Kenny Washington in football. And Washington was really a remarkable athlete. I never knew how good until I got into this. Had great speed, the ability to get around the edge and run away from defenders. He was very strong, 6'2", about 195 at UCLA, could run over linebackers. And the thing that was really remarkable about Kenny Washington was he could throw a football 100 yards in the air. This is a short scoring toss to Jackie Robinson in the 39 UCLA Washington State game.
Oh, wow.
And that's what Groucho was alluding to when he talked about, throwing a dollar bill across the Potomac. But when I went into this, I didn't know a whole lot about him. I knew Washington was a star at UCLA and led the Bruins to an undefeated season in 39. And his number was the first ever retired by an athlete there. And I knew that he and Jackie Robinson played in the same backfield in that 1939 season. And then in 1946, Washington reintegrated the National Football League when he signed with the Los Angeles Rams. But what really astounded me in this whole project was to learn that as great a football player as Kenny Washington was, and there were Hall of Fame players who felt that he was the greatest player they ever saw. But a lot of people who saw him also said that he was even better as a baseball player. And Groucho kind of alludes to that. It brings a little bit of that out as well in this episode of You Bet Your Life.
were you active in other sports besides football when you were in college?
Yes, Groucho. I played baseball. In fact, I believe that truly was my first love.
His father, Edgar Blue Washington, had a couple of brief stints in the Negro Leagues in 1916 with the Chicago American Giants. And then in 1920, when the Kansas City Monarchs started up, he was their first baseman for the first part of the season on their inaugural team. Kenny Washington actually first rose to prominence as a baseball player. In his sophomore year, in the spring of 1934, Lincoln High and Fremont High were battling it out for the city championship in Los Angeles. And what was really interesting for Fremont High, that was no big deal. They were a perennial powerhouse. They had sent a number of players on to pro baseball. But for Lincoln High, it was really, really unique because they were more known for academics than athletics. And in fact, their drama program was second to none in Los Angeles at that time. They sent a number of graduates into Hollywood. Robert Young, Father Knows Best, being maybe the biggest name, but they had a number of their graduates ended up with very successful motion picture and television acting careers. But what was really unique about these two teams battling it out for the league title in the spring of 34 was both were led by 15-year-old sophomores. For Fremont High, it was their third baseman, a young kid named Bob Dorr. And for Lincoln High, it was their 15-year-old shortstop, Kenny Washington. And Dorr and Washington dueled for the city batting title that spring. Dorr edged out Washington, though Washington ended up winning the home run title. They did not crown a baseball champion because there was a polio outbreak, and the city health department ordered an end to any public gatherings with about 2 weeks to go in the high school season. So no champion ended up being crowned. But at the end of that season, Dorr, who had turned 16, left school as a sophomore, signed a professional contract, played a couple of seasons in the Pacific Coast League before his contract was purchased by the Red Sox, and he began a tremendous career with the Red Sox that led to him going into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Washington next played baseball at UCLA, played in 1938. He was one of his teammates, Al Martell, who was the third baseman alongside of him, said, "I had never seen an arm like that on any ball player, like a howitzer." And they often laughed about how Bill Gray, the first baseman on that UCLA team, when Washington had to cut loose, particularly on a throw from deep in the hole, Gray would be dancing around, shaking his hand at having caught such a sizzling throw. But Washington was the first black player to play baseball at UCLA. In league games that season, he hit .409. He finished second in the league. He was leading the league in hitting up till about the last 3 weeks of the season when he contracted the flu, spent a couple of nights in the hospital, and his hitting tapered off over the following couple of weeks. He was the all-conference shortstop and had tremendous power. This is Sunken Diamond, where Stanford still plays their games to this day in Palo Alto. And in April of 1938, in a game there, UCLA and Stanford, Kenny Washington hit a ball, an opposite field home run that the outfielders insisted was still rising as it left the park. And they estimated that it traveled 450 feet. And for decades, that has been talked up as the longest home run ever hit out of Sunken Diamond on the campus at Stanford University. Prescott Sullivan, the sports editor of the San Francisco Examiner in April of '38, wrote of Kenny Washington, leading hitter, best shortstop in the college baseball out our way is Kenny Washington of UCLA. Coaches of other teams say he has major league ability, but big league scouts aren't interested in him. Washington is a Negro.
Yeah.
When UCLA and the University of California would play, the games got added attention. And the reason for that was that the best baseball player on the two teams also had been the best football player at the schools. Kenny Washington for UCLA and Sam Chapman, who was a halfback at the University of California, played outfield for the Bears in football. And Washington, as we mentioned, finished the season hitting .409. He was second in the league batting race, led the league in home runs. Chapman hit .340, which is very respectable, but he ended up 14th in the league in hitting. But at the end of that season, Sam Chapman signed with the Philadelphia A's, walked right off the Cal campus in Berkeley and into the starting lineup for the A's, and never played a day in the minor leagues at all throughout his long professional baseball career. There's been a lot written about Kenny and Jackie Robinson, and while they were football teammates, there have been a number of articles suggesting that they were also baseball teammates, and that's not true. They were not. Kenny played only one season of baseball at UCLA. That was his sophomore year in 1938. The previous year, they couldn't scrape together enough freshmen to make up a freshman baseball team. And then in 1939, the football team came back from a bowl game in Hawaii well after the baseball season had begun. And also the football coaches had arranged some really cushy jobs for several of the players, Washington being the star. Maybe got the cushiest. He got a job at Warner Brothers, a very well-paying job, and he elected to work instead of playing baseball in 39. Jackie enrolled, he transferred over from Pasadena City College in the fall of 39, and then that spring in 1940, he played for the Bruins. He did not play in his senior year. After the football season that year in the fall of 1940, he left school to begin work. He needed to help support his mother and chose not to play baseball and to work instead. But what was interesting is throughout the overall 38 season, Kenny hit .397. In his lone season with the Bruins, Jackie hit .097. In fact, many people have said that of the four sports Jackie participated in at UCLA in 1940, baseball, ironically, was probably his worst. And he ends up having a Hall of Fame career and just a tremendous big league career. Kenny Washington surprised a lot of people when he was asked his greatest thrill in sports. And he said it took place in this stadium and not in a football game in this stadium. This is old Wrigley Field, the original Wrigley Field in Los Angeles. Original because it was named Wrigley Field before the park in Chicago had its name changed from Cubs Park to Wrigley Field. The Chicago Stadium is actually older, but this was home to the minor league Los Angeles Angels and a number of other sporting events throughout the years of its existence. But in Los Angeles, from the late 1920s through about 1947, they had a thriving winter league. It was an integrated winter league, and they had a lot of major league players, Pacific Coast League players. And then in addition, there were players recruited from the Negro Leagues to come out in Southern California. And they would kick off the league with an exhibition game in the stadium and it would match an all-black team against an all-white team. And they were made up of Negro League players on one side and Major League and Pacific Coast League standouts on the other. And one of the things that they did to try and draw a crowd for this exhibition game was they would invite in a headliner. They would pay to bring in a headliner, and every year it was somebody different. One year, Joe DiMaggio played. Another year, in 41, Ted Williams came out and played. Dizzy Dean came and pitched in the game. Bob Feller pitched in the 39 game. And in 1942, they invited Satchel Paige, and he had accepted an invitation to be the headliner in the game. But just a few days before the game was to be played, Paige notified them that he wasn't coming. He had pitched in every single game in the Negro World Series that year, had a sore arm, withdrew from the LA All-Star game, saying he was tired and his arm was a bit sore. And that sent the organizers into a bit of a quandary trying to figure out what they could do. They extended the invitation to Kenny Washington. Now, he had not played competitive baseball in 4 years, but they put him in at second base. He started at second base. He was hitting third in the batting order for the all-black team. And this all-black team had a number of the best players in the Negro League. Cool Papa Bell, Double Duty Ratcliffe. It was quite a team. So Washington played second base, and the white team, the starting pitcher, was Larry French, who had gone 14-5 the previous summer for the Brooklyn Dodgers, pitched 2 scoreless innings in the All-Star game. Washington came up in the bottom of the first inning with 2 outs and planted French's pitch in the last row of the right center field bleachers there, a shot they measured at 421 feet. Rod Dato, who later had a legendary career as the head baseball coach at the University of Southern California, said later, Washington could really slug the ball. French just stood there shaking his head. 3 times during his life, Kenny Washington was at the center of efforts to integrate baseball. And they ranged from the innocent to the very serious efforts. The very innocent effort came in 1940, and it was just maybe 3 weeks after Washington had played his last football game at UCLA. Larry McPhail, then the president of the Brooklyn Dodgers, liked to come out to Los Angeles every year in January for the opening of the horse racing season. He would get together with some of his baseball buddies, and they would go to Santa Anita and hobnob with the movie stars. Well, a sports writer in Los Angeles took advantage of this. He seized on the opportunity and made his column an open letter to Larry McPhail, championing integrating Major League Baseball, and Kenny Washington is the player to do it. He started off his letter writing, I am writing you this letter because I consider you far and away the most brilliant mogul. You've been looking for a heavy-hitting outfielder. Let me tell you about Kenny. You certainly can use him. Baseball needs new vitality, new faces. Let's stop being ostriches and face a few facts. How about just being just plain sensible? Well, that didn't go anywhere. And as we learned many, many years later, when his papers were finally made public, Larry McPhail had no interest in integrating big league baseball. But in 1943, of course, America was at war. Not only were some of the biggest names in the game, Bob Feller and Hank Greenberg, off serving in the military, but the minor leagues were really badly depleted. You see at the upper right, over 1,400 minor league players were in the military, and there were many more working in war industry jobs. On the West Coast in the Pacific Coast League, several of the teams were about to open spring training camps with just a dozen or more players under contract. And both the Hollywood Stars and the LA Angels were very open, saying that they were searching for players. They didn't have many players ready to come into camp. The editors of 2 black newspapers in Los Angeles, the Sentinel and the Eagle, approached the Stars and the Angels with an idea. And they suggested they had a solution to their problem: Kenny Washington. They also offered both clubs a list of players, Negro League players, who were living in the area, working in either the aircraft factories or the munitions plants, and who might be available to play at night or on weekends. And the Hollywood Stars, their manager, Charlie Root, rejected the idea out of hand. He wanted no part of integrating the Hollywood Stars. But the LA Angels, their general manager, Pants Rowland, said he would give Kenny Washington a shot in spring training. But as spring training opened, they never heard anything back. When they followed up with him, he said that the Angels manager, Bill Sweeney, felt they had enough players and they didn't want any black players on the team. The LA County supervisors took up the matter and they urged that baseball reconsider its position. And they pointed out that the Pacific Coast League was really an ideal league to integrate baseball. They noticed that there was no segregation in the hotels. And of course, the UCLA football team in 39 had 5 black players. And on the road, they played in many of the same cities where PCL clubs were located, never had any problems. And of course, their ball clubs did not have segregated seating. So the feeling was that the Pacific Coast League was an ideal league to bring integration to professional baseball. And it was pointed out by the supervisors that Kenny Washington was an ideal player. The supervisors voted a unanimous resolution deploring discrimination in baseball, asking that they put an end to it. And it didn't happen. In 1945, October 23rd, tomorrow is the 77th anniversary of this. Jackie Robinson, at the behest of Branch Rickey, was signed to a contract by the Dodgers farm team, the Montreal Royals. Now, Branch Rickey had made very clear that Robinson was not going to be the only player he signed and assigned to Montreal. He was going to sign a second black player. And Jackie immediately was lobbying for his buddy, Kenny Washington. And he told the New York Daily News just a few weeks after he had signed that Kenny was going to be the guy, that Kenny was going to make his first serious crack at baseball in the 1946 season. Wendell Smith, the sports editor of the Pittsburgh Courier, who was a confidant of Rickey, he covered the Negro Leagues very thoroughly, knew the players in and out, and Rickey trusted him, and Rickey went to him for insights. He sent a letter a couple of weeks later to Branch Rickey reminding him of his plan to sign a second black player, and said in his letter, "I am suggesting very seriously that you consider Kenny Washington. I understand he is much better than Robinson." Well, that didn't happen. Why did it not happen? Well, the Dodgers did not contact Kenny until the last week of January in 1946. And he told them at the time, "I answered no because I had other plans." What were those other plans? About 10 days earlier, the Rams had announced they were leaving Cleveland and the team was moving to Los Angeles. Very quickly, on arriving in Los Angeles to set up a lease agreement with the Coliseum, Chili Walsh, the general manager of the team, met secretly with Washington and struck a deal on a contract. The signing was not to be officially announced until March. That was when the front office staff was due to arrive in Los Angeles. And in fact, the day after Walsh and the staff arrived in Los Angeles, the team held their very first press conference, and it was to announce the signing of Kenny Washington. Washington said about that he was a man of his word. He had given the Rams his word that he would sign with them, and I couldn't go back on it. Throughout his rookie season, though, baseball was brought up quite a lot that winter and fall of 1946. And late that season, when he was in Los Angeles, Leo DeRocher told a sports writer that the Dodgers were, in fact, going to sign Kenny Washington, and he would spend the 1947 season at Montreal. And DeRocher was asked about it multiple times after, and he continued to insist that the Dodgers were going to sign Washington. Articles like this popped up in newspapers around the country throughout the winter. But in spring training, it hadn't happened. And as spring training approached, DeRocher was asked about it. Washington had suffered a knee injury, and DeRocher said that the scouts were really concerned about signing him, and DeRocher told reporters his knee was on the bum, and the Dodgers would not be signing him. Washington wrapped up his 3-season NFL career at the end of the 1948 season. He retired from football, and almost immediately baseball pounced on him. And the first to do so was Bing Crosby. The legendary crooner and actor was a part owner of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And they made an offer to Washington. And had he accepted it and signed with the Pirates, he would have integrated that team. Also, the San Diego Padres and the Coast League offered Washington a contract for the 1949 season. The previous summer, they had integrated the PCL. John Ritchie on the right, the catcher, the first black player to play in the PCL. And that 49 team would have Minnie Minoso in the center and Luke Easter there on the left. But Washington said he had already given his word again and couldn't play baseball because he had agreed to act in 3 movies. He was very popular. He probably in his career, I would say, a dozen different films he appeared in. This one, Rope of Sand, he acted opposite Burt Lancaster. In a very controversial film called Pinky, he played the role of a doctor. 2 of the actors in the film were nominated for Academy Awards. And then he finished up his 3 acting gig by appearing at a real brief part in the Jackie Robinson story. In fact, Jackie was asked if he was nervous playing himself and acting for the first time. And he said, nah, if Kenny can do it, anybody can do it. But Washington did declare that when he was through, he was going to play baseball. And he spent a couple of months working out 5 days a week, training in a park near the LA Coliseum, taking batting practice and fielding practice. And as spring training approached, the New York Giants stepped up and signed Kenny Washington. And it was a big story, particularly in the Black community, this football legend trying to make the jump to Major League Baseball. He had a lot of obstacles to try and make the Giants. At 31, he was the oldest rookie, not just in the Giants camp, but in any Major League spring training camp. He was coming off of 5 knee surgeries. And as you all know, knee surgery back then was a lot more invasive and severe than it is today. Also, he had not played competitive baseball in 5 years. He played a lot of exhibition games during World War II, but had not ever since. With the Giants adding to those odds, Leo DeRocher declared that of his 8 position players, 7 positions were set. The only open job was right field, and he had 8 outfielders competing for 7 outfield spots. Kenny was going to battle Monty Irvin and Don Mueller for the right field job. He got off to an amazing start in inter-squad games, hit tape measure home runs, really impressed DeRocher with his bat and with his power. And when the exhibition schedule began, Kenny Washington was the Giants' starting right fielder. They went down to Tucson for a series with Cleveland. This was the starting outfield, an all-black outfield. Monty Irvin, Hank Thompson in the middle, Kenny Washington. In fact, Cleveland had 4 black starters, and there was a lot of attention on that game, saying that 7 black starters was the most ever in any big league game. After that series, Washington did not hit well in the opening exhibition series. He was assigned to the Giants' B team. They wanted him to get as many at-bats as possible. Most of their games were against other big league B teams and Pacific Coast League teams. The Giants were training in Phoenix, and so they were playing other big league teams that were training in California, excuse me, and Coast League teams that were training in Arizona and in Southern California. At the end of spring training, the Giants came out to LA for 4 games. In a game against the University of Southern California, Washington had a big day, hit a grand slam and a 2-run triple, 6 RBIs. But the next day, DeRocher sat him down, told him he was not going to break camp with the Giants. Make no mistake about it, Kenny can really wrap that ball, he said. Nobody has worked any harder in camp than Kenny. I was disappointed in his throwing. Football must have tightened up his arm and shoulder muscles. A particular scout also told the Los Angeles Times all those years in football just took too much out of him. They offered Washington, they wanted him to go to Jersey City, play with their minor league team. He declined. He had a young family, said that if he was going to play minor league ball, he would have preferred being on the West Coast. DeRocher made some recommendations to Coast League clubs, and it was the Los Angeles Angels who stepped up on the eve of opening day and signed Washington. He began the 1950 season playing in a pinch hitting role, but toward the latter part of April, he became the Angels' starting third baseman. He was injured on a stolen base play at third base, badly spiked by the base runner, kept him out for a while. And then the Angels, when he was going to be activated, said they wanted him to go to a lower level minor league to get a lot of at-bats and knock the rust off of his hitting. And Washington felt at that time that it was probably time to retire from professional sports, and he did. He became a very successful business executive in the wholesale liquor industry. In 1956, he was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame, the National Football Hall of Fame. And Walter O'Malley, when the Dodgers came west in 58, recruited Washington to help the club as an advisor. And as you might recall, in 64, the Dodgers had a marquee signing. They shelled out over $100,000 to sign Willie Crawford, who that spring was the most coveted amateur player in the country. Other clubs, Pittsburgh and the A's, had offered much, much more. But Crawford signed with the Dodgers, and his family shared that Kenny Washington had a lot to do with it, that he established a great relationship with the family, hosted them many times at Dodger Stadium and in the stadium club there, and that led to his signing with the Dodger organization. Kenny Washington died in 1971 at the age of 52 of a very rare and incurable heart-lung disease. This plaque is in the peristyle end of the Los Angeles Coliseum, and it reads, "An All-American for All America." As some of his former teammates said, where Washington could have gone in pro baseball is something to contemplate, he was definitely a victim of baseball's color line. thanks for letting me share the story of Kenny Washington. Very much open to your questions or conversation or anything you want to chat about.
Wonderful story.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, very good.
that took a lot of research to go find all that stuff, right?
It was challenging. It was challenging. There's not too many people still with us that are from that era. So it was fun. The people I did get and their stories and how excited they were to know that Kenny's story was finally going to be told.
Yeah, it's interesting that he died at 53 and 52 and Jackie died at 53.
They were a year apart, and
Yeah.
Kenny and one of Jackie's sons died within weeks of each other, if I remember the dates correctly. So yeah.
Tell you something about the fact that he played in the 51 spring training games. The Indians and Giants, as you know, were the only teams training in Arizona, and they would barnstorm. And they played in Shreveport 6 times. And they played in 49, 50, 52, and 50, 54, and 56. So they missed 51, or else Kenny Washington might have played in Shreveport.
Interesting.
But,
Very interesting.
They didn't come that year. So, yeah.
Great story. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
I'm sorry we didn't have a bigger audience for you today.
No, you guys are great. I appreciate the chance to hang with you.
Well, very well, welcome. Okay, let's see. Nico, you want to come up next?
Sure. Okay, well, I'm talking about my book. I don't know, can you see that? There you go.
I got
Oh,
a
you got it?
copy.
Good. Yes, this is basically a history of professional baseball in Shreveport, and it kind of extends to Northwest Louisiana. And what I cover is not only the teams that played in Shreveport, but also the players from Shreveport and the area that played major league and minor league baseball. But most of it is about Shreveport's professional baseball history, which right now is dormant. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but we have not had a team in Shreveport since 2011 and not had an organized baseball team there since 2002. They had independent league teams for 9 years. And the name of the book is That's the Old Ball Game Shreveport. But just this week, we have found that the Texas Rangers, they have a minor league operation. They have a company, REV Entertainment, that runs 2 of their minor league teams in Carolina. They apparently have called Shreveport, REV Entertainment has called Shreveport to explore building a new stadium in Shreveport. I think that the word is that the Rangers are willing to put up much of the money, but they also want money raised in Shreveport, which we'll see if that happens. But they're talking about a 2,500 seat stadium right there in the area where the current ballpark is about to be torn down. Fairgrounds Field was sat vacant for 9-10 years. And the problem there was that it became bat infested, actual flying bats, not baseball bats. And they couldn't get them out of there. And of course they, pardon me, but they crapped all over the stadium and basically made their home there, and they couldn't get them out. And so finally they got a contract. The city of Shreveport decided to tear down the stadium, but before they could do that, they had to get the bats out. They've been held up for about 4 or 5 months, and got a company that finally went in there and extricated the bats. So anyway, they're about to tear down Fairgrounds Field, and now they've got this package that possibly there's no details that came out this week. They're talking about building a multi-sports facility, which would be, if they could do it for baseball, they could have college baseball and high school baseball. And there are no AA teams available around Shreveport or in the area. So, and then there's no Class A teams anywhere close. So I think they're talking about another independent league team, but that's just a guess on my part. But anyway,
Nico, somebody would have to give up another franchise or a team, right? The way
Yes.
they're working today. Yeah. So,
Yeah, and it's pretty unlikely. You know, the Rangers have a team in Frisco, which is where the Shreveport team moved in 2003, and then I think the Astros are where in
Round Rock?
Corpus.
No,
I think they're in Corpus,
Corpus. Okay.
and I think that's right. They used to be in Round Rock, but then Round Rock went AAA, and I think the Astros AA team is in Corpus.
Yes, it is.
And so they're not. I mean, Frisco has been a terribly successful franchise for AA baseball. I'll give you a little side note on that. When the franchise moved from Shreveport to Frisco, two of the owners of the Shreveport team, Taylor Moore, who's a friend of mine, and his brother, kept 1% of the team. They sold the rest of the 99% went to the Rangers and to the Frisco interests. They kept 1%. They made more money in the first few years in Frisco than they ever made in Shreveport.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's how successful it's been. So anyway, this book is a culmination of probably 5 years of research. You know, I grew up with Shreveport baseball. When we moved to Shreveport in 1956, I came from across the pond, so I was not very familiar with baseball. I knew it existed because they played a little of it in Holland, but I had never seen a game. And that year, 56, was a great year for baseball in Shreveport for one reason. We had a guy named Ken Gettler, who that year hit 62 home runs and broke the Texas League record. And the team was terrible. The attendance was terrible. But, you know, he broke a record that had been set 25 years earlier. I'm not sure about the exact date, but it was a fantastic story. He was a outfielder who had been a home run king throughout his minor league career. But he had one arm that was shorter than the other arm. Okay. He had a childhood accident, and his right arm was a little bit shorter. So he was not a very good outfielder. He couldn't throw very well. He was his eyesight was terrible. He wore thick, bottle thick glasses. And he had been the manager at Portsmouth, Virginia for like 6 years, and that team folded. And he had led that league that he was in, I think it's the Piedmont League. He had led that league like 4 or 5 years in home runs. And so anyway, Shreveport picked him up kind of as a free agent, you know, in the minor leagues. This guy, he was like 27, 28 years old by now. And the second day of the season in 56, he hit 3 home runs against Houston. And then I think he hit another home run the next day. And then the first road trip they took, they went to Houston. And the first night, I think, hit another home run. The second night, his glasses were missing. That somebody had taken his glasses out of the locker. And the Shreveport people thought that the Houston Buffs were responsible for that. Of course, they denied it, but they had to get new prescription glasses for him, and so he missed a couple of games, and they got glasses for him in San Antonio, which was their next stop. But anyway, he went on, and he had hit like 30 home runs by the end of June, and was way ahead of the Texas League record. And long story short, he ended up hitting 62, which I think there were a couple of guys like Dick Stewart, I think hit 66 right about in that same era in the minor leagues. And then, so Gettler, he is the cover story really of my book. This, you know, the picture is of him rounding the bases, and the first chapter is about Gettler, because to me that was the biggest story of Shreveport baseball. And the postscript on it was he went to AAA the next year and he hit 2 home runs. He and then moved around, like was with 4 or 5 teams over the next couple of years and never did anything again and retired from the game. So that was his sister here's a real postscript. In 1988, I was at the Shreveport Times, and I got a phone call one day, and it was Gettler's sister, who I think they lived in Bay City, Michigan, and she and her husband were coming to Shreveport, and they wanted to see the old ballpark, which by that time, was really a wreck. It was, I mean, the Captains were still playing there. I'm sorry, this was 88. I'm sorry, 88. And so the ballpark was abandoned, and the new ballpark had opened up in Shreveport. Anyway, I took them out to the ballpark. I picked them up. I met them somewhere, and I took them out to the old ballpark. And she said, we never knew why he all of a sudden lost his ability to hit. It was just really a mystery to them. And he was out of the game, by 1959, he was out of baseball, and went back to Jacksonville, Florida, and worked as a post office worker, and died at age 50 of a heart attack. And ironically, I ended up working in Jacksonville, years later. So small world department. Anyway, I wanted to inject something here. When you were talking about Kenny Washington hitting the longest home run at Wrigley Field, I can tell you who hit the longest home run I ever saw in Shreveport. Darryl Strawberry hit one for the Jackson Mets in 1982, and I think it's still orbiting Shreveport, downtown Shreveport. I've never seen a ball hit harder or farther. And the next year he was in the big leagues. So he was the best minor league player I saw come through Shreveport. He and Mike Remlinger. I don't know if you remember him, relief pitcher. He came to Shreveport and was with the Captains. Came out of Dartmouth, I believe it was, and started his baseball career in Shreveport. And for about 3 or 4 weeks, he was almost unhittable for the Captains. So those were the best 2 guys I saw over the years. Anyway, then what I did in the book was I broke it down by eras, going all the way back to when Shreveport started professional baseball in 1895. And there are very distinct eras of in the Texas League, and then they went to the Southern Association for a while, and then back in the Texas League for like 20 years. And as I said earlier, they lost the team in 1950 after the 1957 season, basically because attendance had really dropped off, and the integration problem where Shreveport was the only Texas League team that had not integrated, and the other franchises really wanted to bring their black players to play in Shreveport. An example is Willie McCovey played for the Dallas Eagles in 1955. He could not come to Shreveport to play games. So they had 4 or 5 black players in Dallas. One of them was, infielder. I can't remember right now. Anyway, an infielder who went on to the big leagues, Andre Rogers, the shortstop. And so he couldn't come to Shreveport in 56 and 57. I actually saw him play in Shreveport in 56 because he was a Latin American player, and I guess they didn't define him as black. It was really, I distinctly remember seeing him because, it was different. It was a different look. And, but anyway, they couldn't bring their black players there, and that forced Shreveport out. And we lost a team. We did not have a team in 58. And in 59, they joined the Southern Association, which was still all white, and included the New Orleans Pelicans. Shreveport and New Orleans were in the same league 1 year. And I think you guys would know this. New Orleans lost their team in 60, I think it was. I'm not sure.
At the end of 59, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
At the end of 59. And Macon replaced them. The Macon Peaches replaced the Pelicans. And I think New Orleans was without baseball for 6-7 years until they got the Zephyrs. Is that
correct?
Is that right?
In 1977.
Okay, it was a long time then.
Pelicans played 1 year in the Superdome in 1977.
Okay.
As a Cardinals affiliate.
AAA, yeah.
AAA.
So anyway, Shreveport, then we were in the Southern Association for 3 years, which was really my favorite era because I was a kid. I was in junior high, and Dad and I went out to that ballpark many a night with, and the crowds were like 200, 300. And so we were in the Southern Association for 3 years as a Kansas City Athletics farm team, and a pretty good bunch of players. But the most prominent one was Dick Hauser. Dick Hauser came and played. He came out of Florida State in 1960, came to Shreveport and had a fabulous season. And they darn near won the pennant that year. They darn near won the regular season pennant. Won like 20, had a middling record, and then won like 24 out of 27 games coming down the stretch, and missed the pennant by half a game. And so that was my favorite era. And one other guy that played in that time period was Fred Norman, who was a pitcher for Cincinnati, if you'll remember, little left-hander, but he came to Shreveport as a 19-year-old, his first year of pro ball. Yeah, he signed and came to Shreveport and didn't have a very good year, to tell you the truth. Anyway, and then so we were out of baseball from 62 to 67, and then the Atlanta Braves were looking to move their AA team, which had been in Austin, and could not compete with the University of Texas baseball. So they were looking for a place to put their AA team, and they helped. They came to the city of Shreveport, and they were willing to put in money to refurbish the ballpark, which by this time was more than 20 years old and was beginning to decay a little bit. So they were in there for 3 years, and once baseball returned to Shreveport in '68, it was there through 2002, through a bunch of minor league affiliates. But basically, the San Francisco Giants were in there for 22 years, and were there during the transition to the new ballpark, which opened in '86, which was really, really nice at that point, but was right before the era of the retro ballparks. So it was a concrete stadium, and it unfortunately decayed pretty quickly. There was a really great era there where attendance was as good as it had ever been in Shreveport, except for the years right after World War II, which was great attendance everywhere. But for about 10 years, Shreveport had a second golden era of baseball. And they made the playoffs 10 consecutive years and won 3 Texas League championships. Let me tell you this. When we came to Shreveport in '56, they had just won Texas League titles in 3 of the previous 4 years. All the time I was in Shreveport, they never won a league championship. I left, and then they made the playoffs 10 years in a row and won 3 Texas League titles and finished second twice. So as I write in the book, late in the book, I was a jinx. I was a jinx to the franchise there. So, but also in the book, I have a chapter on the 6 Hall of Fame players that played in Shreveport, including Willard Home Run Brown, who originally grew up in Shreveport and was one of the first blacks to play in the American League right after Larry Doby. He was a fabulous Negro Leagues player and slugger, and signed with the St. Louis Browns, and it was a terribly unhappy time for him, and he only lasted like 2 months in the big leagues. But then came back to minor league baseball and played in the Texas League. So, and then the latest Hall of Famer is Lee Arthur Smith, who grew up in Castor, Louisiana. I know you all know where Castor is, right? It's about 40 miles from Shreveport, and it's right next to the town where my wife grew up. So very familiar with that area. But I actually wrote a story on Lee Arthur Smith when he was a high school senior. So, I also did a chapter on all the players from North Louisiana who played in the big leagues. That includes Joe Adcock and Clint Courtney, and Vida Blue, J.R. Richard, and then George Stone and Ralph Garr, who played for the Atlanta Braves. And Garr went on to play for the White Sox too. But and then another chapter is on, I think I said this already, on all the minor league players from North Louisiana, which took quite a bit of research. But it's basically a history book. It's not, I'm not saying it's great writing, but there's a heck of a lot of history in the book. So.
Yeah, I can attest that. It's really well done. Good job. Hey, Nico, do you remember, were you there when Scooter Tucker played for Shreveport? He was in the Giants organization. Like
I think he was there after I left.
Okay, yeah, he was from around my hometown in Mississippi. He was
really okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell you two New Orleans guys that played in Shreveport. Let me think here. Oh, Ray Yoakum was with the Shreveport Sports not very long and not very successfully,
right.
But he went back to New Orleans, went to the Pelicans, and was actually the Pelicans manager in 1958. I think he was in Shreveport in 56 or 55. And then Fabian Mang played his last professional baseball season was in Shreveport in 1970. He was with the Atlanta Braves organization.
Yeah, he was
I actually remember Fabian.
Jesuit high school baseball and basketball. He's very good. Yeah.
Oh, he was a great basketball player too. Yeah. So, yeah, a little bit of New Orleans there.
Very good. Hey, did you ever find whatever happened to that basketball game you sent out, the old timers? Did they ever get together?
Yes. Yes. It was pretty neat. Lou Dunbar was there.
Did you get to go?
A little bit past his playing weight from when he was first with the Globetrotters. Just a couple of pounds past that.
Yeah.
But just a great guy. Just great personality.
Did you get to go? Did you get to attend it?
Yeah, I went. Yes.
Oh, cool. Did Johnny Arthurs from New Orleans?
No, we didn't have anybody. No New Orleans people or Baton Rouge people. That was kind of disappointing because we were hoping to get some of those guys there, and they're going to do it again. I think they're going to do it Final Four weekend next March. So maybe we can get some of those New Orleans people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions for Nico?
Yeah, I do. Nico, how can one get a copy of your book?
I'll be glad to send you one.
Oh,
yeah.
Happy to purchase one.
Okay, Richard can give you my email address.
Yeah.
I also want to get a copy. My good friend Doug Greenwald was the Shreveport radio broadcaster for many seasons.
He sure was. His name is in this book.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, he does.
Yeah, I did the history of all the radio announcers, and yeah.
Terrific. We'll connect on that. That's great. Thanks.
Okay, great. I really enjoyed the Kenny Washington thing. That was very interesting.
Thank you.
I did not realize that he was such a great baseball player.
Makes two of us.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Next on the agenda was I was going to review a story I did for SABR Games about Lenny Murillo, who committed 4 errors in one game in 1942. I don't have a presentation type thing, but so I just wanted to kind of cover that. It was he tied a major league record. It was there were several players in the early parts of the game that had done the same, and it's kind of funny that he started his career. He made 68 errors one year in 1940 and 72 errors in 1941. So he had a little bit of history with booting the ball. And he had so the background on this was it was late in the season. and his wife was expecting a baby, and so he had taken a bus from New York where they had just played the Giants. This is with the Cubs, to his Boston home, and the baby delivered, like 5 a.m. on the Sunday morning, and he winds up playing in a doubleheader that afternoon. One interesting fact was that Warren Spahn made his first major league start in this game. It was only his third career appearance, and the other pitcher, Hank Wise, was making his had just made his major league debut a few years earlier. Of course, Spahn missed the next 3 seasons serving in World War II. But anyway, Murillo's era spree started in the bottom of the second. He misplayed a ground ball from Clyde Klutz, and then he later in that inning he fumbled a return throw from the outfield and allowed runners to advance. And then after a walk that loaded the bases, Spahn struck out the next guy, but then Spahn was batting and struck out. And then Murillo booted consecutive ground balls by Tommy Holmes and Skippy Roberge and gave the Braves a 2-0 lead. So Spahn actually struck out the 5 of the next first 8 batters, but then he took a real pounding in the next inning when the Cubs scored 5 runs on 5 hits. So the Cubs wound up winning 12-8. Spahn didn't look like the Hall of Famer he eventually became. He gave up 6 runs, although only 1 was earned because the Braves were making a bunch of errors as well. I think it was total like 7 errors in the game. But the other players that we were able to verify, because if you go back to some of the older newspapers, the accounts are kind of fuzzy about when the errors were made, what inning they were in. But we were finally, with some help, able to verify that Shorty Fuller in 1988 made 4 errors in an inning, and then Lewis Whistler in 1891 did the same, and then later Bob Brenly with the I think it was with the Giants then committed 4 errors in an inning in 1986. So the general supposition was that Murillo became distracted by the birth of his son as the day wore on, but it was probably because he was tired. He was just physically drained. Because it was in the second game of the doubleheader that he made the errors. He finished the season with the 3rd most errors in the National League with 42, behind Eddie Joost and Danny Murtaugh, who had 50 and 43. So anyway, Lenny's son was born that day, and his nickname became Boots, I guess after his father's post-memorial game. And then Lenny became a scout for the Cubs later, and actually considered signing his son, who was an outstanding high school player, and also at Holy Cross. So on the advice, though, of his father, he took a $50,000 signing bonus with the Pirates. So Lenny Jr. played in the Pirates organization for about 3 years, never advanced above Class A. But his son, Matt Murillo, was a major league catcher with the White Sox, Indians, and Twins in 89 to 95, mostly in a backup role. But then Matt's son, Nick, became the 4th generation professional player. He signed with the Orioles as a non-drafted free agent in 2014, and he played only 1 season in the low minors. So that was a background on. I thought they should have named Lenny should have had the nickname Boots rather than his son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brenly played in Shreveport.
Did he? Okay.
He came up in '79 and came up from Class A. He was a 3rd baseman. And if you had told me that he would make the big leagues, I would have told you no way. He was just an average player. And but he could catch and he could play 3rd and some other positions. And so we followed his career all the way through.
Yeah, cool.
So Richard,
Yes.
I want to know about your hat.
Yankees? Yeah. We're not looking so hot right now.
We'll be all right.
Yeah.
We'll be all right. I have a good feeling.
Astros pitching is pretty formidable.
They're
I'll
pretty
tell you.
good.
Yeah.
They're pretty good, but I have a good feeling about this, okay?
I hope you're right. Derby, you're a big Yankees guy too now, right?
Well, you got Cole and Cortez coming up, so
That's right.
Our
hopefully
pitching,
it's 2-2.
our pitching is set up. We just got to hit the ball.
Yeah, right. Had a lot of strikeouts in last 2 games.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, this series is following the same pattern as it did the last time we played them in the ALCS. Lost the first 2 games in Houston, won 3 in New York, and then lost games 6 and 7 in Houston.
Okay.
So it's
Yeah,
good.
but they were better at stealing signs than we were.
Yeah.
What's that?
So they were better at stealing signs than we were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have a really good ball club, and they pitched great against the Yankees so far. So
I think Christian Javier, I think, is pitching for the Astros. So
yes,
he hadn't pitched much.
If we get a hit today, it'll be the first time we've gotten one off of him this year.
Really? Yeah, he's pretty good too. They even in that last game, they didn't use a lot of their pitchers that they had in the bullpen that I thought were some of the better pitchers, and they just didn't need them. You know,
Right.
I think Presley ended the game with some strikeouts, but they got a lot of arms in reserve there.
Yes, they do. They're good.
Yeah. Any other topics? Anything else? I didn't want to cover. Derby, I have one for you, I guess, for our local chapter. I've finally broken through with Jesuit High School to form a SABR club for the students.
Good.
It's been a long road, but we are Rick Dempsey and I are to go next week to a first meeting with the students. I went to a sign-up day, had about probably 15 or 17 students said they were interested. We'll see. It's been over a month since that happened, so I'm hoping they still remember that they signed up. But so we'll see how it works out. But it's been an ordeal, kind of working through their process to get it organized, and it's taken a lot longer than I wanted it to. But
and that's next week.
It's next week on I think Thursday.
Shoot me the details if you could, because if I'm still in town, I'd love to join you.
Well, that's been part of the problem is they want to limit who can participate, and so I had a hard time even getting Rick signed up, and we had to go through a training session, being around students, and had to do a background check and had to go through all that. So that's partially what's been holding things up. So
yeah, well,
let me
may
get started.
not like me anyway. I have with my history at Loyola.
Yeah.
Because I was on the board for 27 years.
You wouldn't be acceptable. You wouldn't be acceptable.
Well, I posed the question to the new president, who's the interim president's a Jesuit, and I asked him, I said, is there some sort of a rivalry or feud between the Jesuit high school Jesuits and the Loyola Jesuits? I said, my team, my college team, has to get inoculated so they can travel across the river to West Wego and play in Segnet Park.
Oh, really?
We're not allowed to play in John Ryan Stadium.
Oh, you kidding?
Not allowed to practice there, not allowed to play there, not allowed to do anything there. I'm like, I understand that the Jesuit alumni or whoever built it, and we didn't pay for it, but we could certainly raise money to contribute to the maintenance of it and everything else.
Sure.
Not a conversation. It's like crickets.
Really?
Well,
let me get it started, and then I think we'll be able to open it up and get some guests, to come and speak and talk to the guys. So I just give us an opportunity to get some younger folks in our local chapter here, because we're all over 70, so mostly. So
well, and also I talked to Tulane's new baseball coach at a football game last week, and he'd like to come talk to us as well.
Oh, cool! That'd be great.
So, yeah, but he's in mourning. He just broke his fungo that he's had since 1992.
Oh, really?
And so he's in mourning. Services are to be held sometime later.
Yeah.
What about offering some kind of gift for a Jesuit student that would write a baseball
Well,
article?
yeah, I'm hoping to get it to the point where we're just not that the children, that the students are coming up with the content. That's my goal. So I have one of the math teachers is the faculty moderator. They have to have somebody from the school attend with us, and so he's a Rod Carew fan. So I'm hoping he can help generate some more interest there as well. So,
Right.
so yeah, hopefully it'll be more of the students are active rather than us just talking
Well,
to them.
well, if they have a math club, see if they can explain to me some of the sabermetrics.
Yeah, I think we probably could get some input on that.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I hate to tell you, but if the phone is buried, there'll be no services.
Yeah. So,
Sabermetrics, huh? Wow.
all right.
Well, Richard, let me know if I can help you with that project at all.
Yeah, I sure
I'd
will.
love to do that.
Hopefully I'll be able to bring some more information about what's going on here real soon.
Perfect.
Just a little quick tidbit. I had a nice chance last Saturday. My wife Ginger and I attended the 100th anniversary of Babe Ruth's visit to Sleepy Eye, Minnesota, where he hit a couple of home runs. And the little town of Sleepy Eye, it's hysterical how they honor this event, over and over again through the generations. But the ballpark is still there.
Really?
And according to the historians there, this is one of only 3 ballparks left in the country that's actually still in existence and used. Only 3 ballparks that Babe Ruth played in: Fenway, Wrigley, and this little ballpark in Sleepy Eye, Minnesota.
Wow.
So it's pretty neat. They had a nice event with some speakers, and a ton of people came.
Yeah.
And of course, one of the funny things was they had hot dogs there. So
Yeah.
at the place, at the brewery, hot dogs loaded up with stuff,
Yeah.
in memory of Babe, I guess.
Right.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Incidentally, the Yankees trained in Shreveport in 1921, which was the year that Ruth hit 59 home runs. But in an exhibition game against the Shreveport, whatever they were then, the Gassers, I guess, he hit 3 home runs one day here in Shreveport. And Richard can tell you this, my book includes a whole page that the Shreveport Times did after he hit those 3 home runs.
The following year, they came to New Orleans for spring training for 3 years.
Yeah.
I had a wonderful picture of him asleep in a laundry hamper after over celebrating. It was the Hotel Grunwald at the time. Now it's called the Roosevelt Hotel. But Gene, Abner also signed when he started up the Southern Association in 1900. Signed up the Shreveport team for inaugural season there.
Yeah, they were in the Southern Association for a few years.
First 2 years, and then they moved over.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Well, we had a guy named Al Grunwald who also played in New Orleans. Played in 53 and 56 in New Orleans, and he was one of my favorite players in 59 and 60.
Went on to play for the Senators, didn't he?
He was with the Pirates.
Pirates.
He actually was with the Pirates before he came to Shreveport, and I think he went from New Orleans maybe to the Pirates.
Well, yeah, they were still a Pirates farm club at the time, but I thought he'd also played in Washington.
Yeah, left-handed pitcher and first baseman.
Yep.
Grooney. Yeah. Listen, I need to run. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks, Nico. Appreciate it. And
look forward to your book.
Yeah.
Let me know when you do another meeting like this.
Okay, I will do.
All right. Good.
Thanks again.
See you later.
Unless anybody else has got anything else, we'll sign off here. And, thanks again.
Okay, well, no, Richard, you and I'll we'll circle back and see what we can plan for next year.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Thanks again, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Dan.
See you guys.
Good to see you again.
Thanks,
All right,
Ron,
take
for
care.
joining in. Y'all take care.
Bye-bye.